11:59 at Radio Free America, and this is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.
Well, that ended pretty abruptly. All right, well, welcome everybody. I think the audio is working, but I'm going to go test it, I guess. We don't have anybody joining us yet to give me some feedback on that. So I can see people trickling in here. And how do I get to test this? I don't have it open anywhere. Let me go figure it out. All right, so thanks everybody again for joining us. If you're listening to this in the future, there you go. But if you're listening live, then yeah, this is live, so you can participate and be part of what we're doing here. All right, so I'm going to bring this up full screen now, and we're looking at the Substack blog, and that's what I've got highlighted here. So you can grab that link either in the description of the video or in the comments there. And that's what we're looking at on the screen here. And I'll pull this off so we can see the full screen. And this is just a project that I've been wanting to do for a while. You know, there's this, I don't know what the implied accusation is, but this thing goes around that gun owners own more than a few guns. And somehow that's an issue, or somehow that implies something. Like I say, there's some connotation there. And because they don't understand guns, the people who would accuse gun owners of owning more than a few guns, those people that don't understand, who knows again what they're thinking. Then there's the ability to just be comfortable with that accusation from our side, so shining some light on it there. But then this issue for people that are maybe new to guns and have bought their first gun as an adult, that's a different situation than some. So a lot of people have different experiences with gun ownership. So I wanted to just kind of put all of those concepts into a blog. And this is where I came up with. So why firearms are unlike anything else we own, an economic case for gun ownership. So guns occupy this space in our culture and in our economies, like our personal economy, but I think in the greater economy that is either overlooked or unappreciated. They function as heirlooms, as investments, and more, right? Compared with other things that we have out there, you know, that'll change over time. But when I was growing up, owning a vehicle was a big deal. You know, we have this ability to travel, and we have all these states to travel in. We have this infrastructure of roads, both the big interstates, the local state highways, and then there's some really fun times to be had just driving on back roads and, you know, the old infrastructures. So we have such a lot of ways to explore the country with vehicles. In my day, vehicles were a big thing, a big symbol of freedom. And they cost money, right? You can only own so many cars. You only have so much space in your driveway. You can only have so much time to work on them. And, you know, what other things are there? There's watches, there's electronic consumer items. There might be tools or something that you use for a specific thing, or maybe construction. But I'm thinking like a specific hobby or a specific trade. You know, there's these things that we think of as investments that, and then there's gold and those kind of investments, right? But still, those, what can you do with gold? Like, except look at it, unless you're forging it into watches or rings or jewelry or something. And then, you know, what you know, that takes away or adds to the investment, depending, right? So, like I say, as far as like holding value and being able to transfer value and pass on value from generations, I'd say guns are unique. So let's take a look at some of those ways, just, you know, again, to get beyond the assumptions and to kind of categorize some of these things. So I think that, at least from my experience, they were affordable at an early time in my life. When I was young, I was, you know, eager to buy my first firearms that I wanted, just to own. And when I was out on my own, I felt I needed a couple of guns just to, you know, have for recreation and for defense and whatnot. And, you know, as I was able to afford those, you're able to hold on to those because they're not real big. They're not like cars and boats and motorcycles and other things that might have that similar kind of cost. You could save up for them in a paycheck or two and acquire them. And as you go on and get bigger paychecks, you're able to buy larger ones. And again, even a lot of guns can fit into a safe the size of a refrigerator or smaller. So I think as far as buying them early, at least again in my experience, we would buy those as we were young, and then as we were young adults, we used those to trade and to barter. We would pawn them all the time, along with other things. But really, it was aside from our tools. A lot of times we would pawn our tools. We weren't rich, and we needed to, buy things or fund a project or something, and we would pawn our tools all the time, especially the stuff we weren't using. If you're not using concrete tools, you pawn them, and then you buy back your paint tools. You do some paint jobs, you pawn them. We did that quite a bit back in the day, and guns were part of that. I think, again, people that don't do that, or people that haven't experienced that, don't think of that aspect of, the value per weight or value per volume, I guess, of a firearm. Then we talk about loss of value. You buy something like a CD player or electronics or even gaming systems and stuff. They just don't have the same depreciation and appreciation. Of course, there's always the outliers, but guns, again, hold value. Often it appreciates, especially over some time. Being compact, portable, and practical, go into that a little bit. Again, you can fit a number of guns actually in a shoebox or a small lock box, and that can be hidden so that it can be even in an apartment or RV or something like that. You can keep, again, that value quite small and that useful value in a box that's protected and hidden. Let's see, again, compared to most of our other expensive possessions that we acquire. Then pass down is family wealth. What things do we pass down? Oftentimes, at least in people I know, they pass down military things like swords or medals and things like that have family value, I guess. Then there's the sentimental value of, other things. And then you got your practical value of like blankets and, dinnerware and things like that. And I think guns fit into kind of all of those. They're useful. Of course, after a while, you're not going to use a valuable family heirloom. But if worst case scenario, if you did have to actually use it as a practical thing, unless it's broken or something, you've got that option. But even if you just had to sell a valuable family thing or pawn a valuable family thing, a gun is not quite unique, but a fairly unique specimen in that realm. Again, you get into like watches and other things, I'm sure, and I might be missing something. But again, when we hear people tell us that, like, why do you own 15 guns? Well, if 3 or 4 of your guns were passed down from your grandparents, we're talking about something different than their perception, right? Their weird, narrow perception of violence equals guns or gun equals violence. Who knows what they're thinking? So then we got your potable or your ability to liquidate these things. And because some of them have been acquired when you're young and they have less value to as you're older, imagine if you kept all your old cars. No one can do that, really. Not very many people can do that. I don't even know anybody that really does that. But often our first cars can be valuable after some amount of time, especially when we get old. Our first couple of cars were probably super expensive once we're old. But nobody holds on to them. But your first gun or two, again, if your first gun was an old cowboy lever action from some old guy down the street that no one valued at the time, and now you own a pre-1984 or whatever it is lever action Winchester or something like that can appreciate quite a bit. And again, these things don't have to be sold. They can be bartered. We have quite a few guns. I've talked about it in our live chats, where we have quite a few guns amongst our group of friends where we trade them back and forth. This one H&K I always talk about. I think if I thought about it, I know who originally bought it, but we have all owned it for a number of years, sometimes a year at a time, sometimes months at a time. But for us, it's like a $500 bill. And whoever has it and needs $500 will kind of offer it up to the group, and one of us will buy it from them. whoever happens to have that kind of money laying around. And we know that we've kind of got that ticket, and we can probably sell it to one of each other. And we've all shot it, and we've all appreciated it over the years. So none of us really want to let it go. There's a couple that we have let go, which sucks because none of us had the money at the time, and they were expensive guns. But I think there's that concept that, again, I don't know, there's probably some other things like watches and other items of high value that retain value over time that people might do like that. But, you get to too high a value and people don't want to just pass them around like that. Guns are right in that mix of being a commodity without being super rare commodity usually. And again, these can be, the value can be recognized across time and across state lines. Then we get consistent utility over time. While technology often replaces itself. So I guess that's in thinking about in contrast to some of the technological investments people might spend money on. Again, technology doesn't really last for the most part, except for the rare exceptions of a unique specimen piece of electronics or something that people have some fond memory of. Very few pieces of electronics hold their value over time as far as their mechanics, because technology just moves on and they're useless. I have some really neat cameras that are just useless now, but at the time they were great. Crabby's out there, welcome. So I've sold more than a few guns in consignment in my local gun shop. Being an unfriendly county has gotten great value for them. I guess that's an interesting aspect too, that laws and things can change and affect the value of our scarcity and value of our property there. So when people who don't own guns ask the question of why are there so many guns out there, that's part of what I wanted to address with this, and give us the ability to have that conversation comfortably with them, confidently, to let them see from our perspective. Imagine if it was golf clubs and you knew someone that had a whole garage full of golf clubs. Unless they're a hoarder, there's probably some reason, right? They understand the value. They're collecting a specific one. Maybe they've got golf clubs that were used by specific golfers, at individual events or something. And then you wouldn't raise your eyebrow at all. You'd go, oh, wow, what an interesting collection. There's nothing wrong with you. You're just a person who has interest in this. And since we're not afraid of golf clubs, we have no problem with you owning a garage full of them. But again, there's this lack of normalization of guns is the rift that some can exploit to suggest that a quantity of guns is somehow nefarious or has negative connotation. So, looking at them as different tools for different jobs is something we often talk about. You have a gun for hunting versus a gun for, investment versus a gun for taking to the range and shooting bowling pins really fast. Even if you're just going to the range, shooting bowling pins very fast requires a different gun than shooting very small groups on a paper target at a very long distance. You can do both things with both guns, but a gun that shoots distance accurately is often going to shoot slowly, so it's not going to do well in a speed competition, where a gun that can shoot quickly often can't shoot accurately at long distance because it's not, again, they're made for different things. And people who, again, don't understand guns or have little interest in putting effort into understanding guns can't be forced to understand this, but we can do a better job of making this understandable. So again, owning them for different reasons to do different things is something that we understand, but how do we explain that to other folks? All right, so with that, I put an example in here of someone who might have bought, this is somebody old, I guess, somebody older than us, for most of us. Somebody in the 1970s could have bought basically a common revolver, a medium size, run-of-the-mill revolver, a decent one, a Smith & Wesson, for a normal price. And then while it became popular as a duty gun and then kind of lost its popularity, it remained in manufacture for a while, and then versions of it were used for different things. And now that same gun would go for quite a bit and guns like it, are uh, only available. So it's often things that are, again, like just like a car or anything else. You buy something that is decent at the time, and you're probably going to get some pretty good value for it over time, even if it's used. You buy something cheap, even over time, you might get some increase in value over it. And if you buy something amazing, especially if you don't use it over time, you probably end up with, some real investment opportunity. So again, that specific example of the revolver is not rare. That's probably a lot of people's grandfathers' examples of, kind of experiencing what we're experiencing. I suspect after World War II, it's a little bit different than now. People weren't purchasing a firearm as adults out of reaction to media-induced fear, but instead the reality of a Second World War, which caused the entire planet to shut down basically every generation or every other generation, depending on how the family was, fit into it all. That's a mindset that is, let's own something that we can keep in the house discreetly, that if something does come down the streets or somebody does start knocking at the door and, to suggest something or to take something, we aren't completely helpless. And even though people didn't stockpile or call it prepping or anything, that was just called, understanding the realities of the previous 3 generations, on the planet Earth. So that's would have been the situation, I guess, for a lot of people in that, in the 1970s, being the children of those World War II generations, and our parents, our grandparents, depending on how old we are. So again, that would have been their typical situation. Like, again, today somebody's buying their clone, their Glock, their clone, their their M&P or their whatever other brand, and they're buying one of 100,000 that'll be built that year. They're not thinking they're buying anything of much of investment, but those are getting put on shelves. Sometimes they're being worn around. Often they're being bought, and then the next grip angle or the next popular red dot plate gets put out, and that gun that they just bought less than a year or two ago gets put on the shelf or in the safe, and the next one gets pulled out and worn because it's cooler and it has a better red dot grip angle. And a lot of these guns are going to pop up years and years from now. Are they going to be worth a lot? I suspect a lot of them are going to be I think a lot of them are going to be gone over the years, just like anything. The things that are common, people put little value on. So I think they're going to be worked on by gunsmiths. They're going to be lost. They're going to be unappreciated. And those rare ones that do stick around, probably going to be of value in the future. Crabby Turtle saying Glocks go. He said that Glocks go for a pretty penny in California. Exactly. When you're talking about laws that restrict or prohibit, competition, basically. So anyway, so there's like that example there, and again, it says it's not a rare case. So I agree. And guns being a true commodity can be purchased by just about anybody at any time. They almost always increase in value, especially depending on how you use them. And for these reasons and more, they're more than a hobby. They're more than a tool, and they're more than just an investment piece. Again, understanding this angle, it's something that we all are aware of. I just wanted to shine a light at it here for a bit. So I wrote this blog post about it a while back, and it goes live. It went live this morning, I guess. So I figured instead of just posting a post about it, I would also make a quick video. I also wanted to note at the end here, I put a question because as I was putting this one together, it made me think of, okay, so there's how many guns on the planet and how many of them are in the United States? I'm sure you've seen infographics and, things that allude to those numbers. Well, I don't know them off the top of my head. We own a chunk of the guns on the planet, and knowing that guns are not just symbols of, violence or that kind of thing. Like the other side would lead everyone to believe we understand that they're just a tool like anything else, but understanding that these tools, I mean, the least expensive firearms are a couple of $100. The broken inexpensive firearm is worth $100 or $60. So most firearms are easily worth a couple of $100. I don't even know anymore. Maybe NSSF puts out something on what the average price of a new firearm would be. But let's say that it's $400 or $500. How many of them are there? And if the average price, even if we count all the old ones, is even at $300 or something, that's just a lot of value. So when there's people out there who would like to disarm us, is it always just because they care about what the gun is, or they just don't want that much transferable value that isn't on any kind of books? Because think about like I just said, like there's a bunch of us that would trade $500 around. There's people that would like in on that $500 every time it got moved around. That'd be $5 to them every time we moved it electronically. So that being said, we're going to do another piece on this in a bit. I'm not an investigative journalist or anything. I just know how to use the robots, and I have a blog post and a YouTube channel. So figured I'd use those together today. And we're going to be doing a game show here in a bit. If you'd like to join us for that, we're going to play around a little bit with the live interactive nature of the internet to do another type of game show. I don't think we've done this one before. It'll be a 7 degrees of gun bacon. So we're going to try. I've invited quite a few people. We'll see if anyone joins us. And then we'll have them try to associate different gun stuff, Second Amendment stuff, with as few steps as possible, within 7 steps, ideally. So if you're interested in that, join us live here in a bit. Otherwise, thanks for joining us. Thanks to Krabby Turtle for having the fortitude to join, to comment live. That's what it's all about. You probably see a lot of shows where your comments aren't appreciated or commented on. I do these live as opposed to a regular video so that we have the ability to do this interactive stuff. So take advantage of that, especially the people on X who seem to join us and never chat. That's weird. So don't be weird. Be part of the conversation, and we'll be back next time. Oh, you know what? I need to put a different outro on here. I wonder if it lets me do these outros off air, because I'm always having to do them on air. But anyway, here we go with the outro. So yeah, thanks Sonny for joining.
Shit. Ninja?